Hi everyone, Ben here. This time, we'll be looking at the second runner-up of this year's World Championship of Public Speaking, Kwong Yue, and his speech, Less and More. This review and analysis will assume that you're familiar with the judging criteria, rules, and timing of an international speech. If you need reference, feel free to check the documents in the description below.
It's wintertime, 2001. I'm 21 years old and I'm sitting on a Boeing 747 that's about to land into Beijing International Airport. I look out the window and all I see are dead trees, black cars, and pollution so thick I can actually look and stare at the sun. I think to myself, we're not in Kansas anymore, Kwong-o.
This is a great time to talk a bit more about introductions. Even if you have never heard a Toastmasters speech before, you can instantly tell when does the introduction end purely from the emphasis, pause, and a slight shift in tone. We're not in Kansas anymore, Kwong-o. This line from the Wizard of Oz movie stands out in particular and punctuates the end of the introduction. And you can even hear a bit of laughter. He has set the scene here. He's entering into a completely different world, which will be brought up again towards the end.
You see, I was about to embark on a one-year study abroad program in China to learn Chinese. My parents had told me, don't go.
Throughout his speech, Kwong has a tendency to use the words, you see, at the start of his sentences. From what I know, whether or not this is a speech crutch like or you know, is still debatable.
They were afraid I wouldn't survive, and they were afraid I'd get brainwashed. But they did eventually come to flow, and I did convince them, and they just said to me, make sure you party less and study more.
He also has this weird pause in this sentence.
But they did eventually come to flow, and I did convince them.
What I can gather from this is, similar to Luisa Montalvo, Kwong's approach is to be as genuine as possible. Whereas Luisa is using a rather non-standard structure to a World Championship level speech, Kwong is using a rather non-standard delivery. He is opting for a casual conversational feel instead of an expressive, performative vibe. Some of you may be thinking he's not as polished or he's making mistakes, but remember, most of his speech is about his experience on a plane. It's not as dramatic as protecting the groom's shoes or helping a stranger with a different accent change his car tire, for example.
Now, the whole journey started 12 hours earlier. 12 hours earlier, I was in Sydney, Australia, and I was saying goodbye to my mum and dad, and they were afraid I'd get hungry on the flight. So they gave me a cup of instant noodles and a fortune cookie.
If you're wondering why is the fortune cookie so funny, feel free to check out Kwong's second place speech in the 2011 World Championship in the description down below. It's almost like Easter eggs in a Disney movie.
And as I walked down the aisle of that Boeing 747, I remember thinking the one thing that all young 21-year-old men think. I hope that the person sitting next to me is hot, young, and single. And I get to my seat, I look down, she isn't hot, she isn't young, so I don't really care if she isn't single. Sitting next to me is this middle-aged Chinese lady with some grey hair around her eyes. And she's old enough to be my mother. And so I let out this big sigh, and I tell myself, maybe she has a daughter. The flight takes off. We're in the air. I look across and I notice that she's struggling with the in-flight entertainment. And instead of asking the flight attendant for help, she actually turns to me and she asks me in Chinese. And I quickly work out that she doesn't speak any English. Now, this is a huge problem for me for two reasons. See, one, I didn't speak that much Chinese. That's why I was going to China to study. And two, I felt it was like people like her who made people like me look bad. You see, I'm an Australian-born Chinese. I was born in Australia, I grew up in Australia. I say, "G'day, mate." I played cricket, and I've even had a kangaroo. for dinner.
A textbook way of writing humor. If you're struggling on how to make your audience laugh, set them up with triads, pause for the punchline, and derail their expectations.
But she, on the other hand, she didn't speak English, she probably spoke really loud, and she probably didn't know how to line up. And it was people like her moving to Australia, and it's because of her that people would come up to me and tell me that I should go back to my own country. And so I was sitting there and I was wondering, do I help her or not? And every now and then the flight attendant would come by and the flight attendant would look at the middle-aged Chinese lady and ask, would you like chicken or beef? And the middle-aged Chinese lady would look at me, the flight attendant would look at me, and the flight attendant asked, would your mother like chicken or beef? I try to explain to her, she's not my mother, maybe a future mother-in-law, I don't know. But for the rest of that trip, 12 hours, I become her personal translator. And the only thing I want to do is talk less and sleep more. Finally, our plane arrives into Beijing. I get off the flight, I give the middle-aged Chinese lady this really awkward smile goodbye. I go through customs, I pick up my bags, and I step out of the terminal. And I am in trouble.
One of Kwong's defining characteristics as a contest speaker is how well he plays with pace. He can switch between speaking fast and speaking slow effortlessly.
Because I am 21 years old and I do not plan very well. I cannot read the characters, I cannot read the signs, and I don't know how to get from the airport to my university. I go up to a gentleman who looks like a security guard and I ask him for help, and he says to me, which pretty much means go away. I go up to another gentleman and I ask him for directions, and he goes, that way. And I stand there and I look around and I realize I'm in a totally different world. I don't speak Chinese, I don't read Chinese. I am lost and I'm alone. And I think, what would my parents say to me right now? I told you so.
Again, Kwong is referencing the content of one of his previous speeches. Only do this if you know your audience still remembers your previous speech. Judging from the laughter, Kwong successfully attempted this twice.
I turn around and it's a middle-aged Chinese lady. She comes up, she says, where are you going? And I show her an address on a piece of paper. She throws me into a taxi, she jumps into the taxi with me, and for the next hour and a half we go towards my university. As I'm sitting in the cab, I can't help but feel her motherly love, and I can't help but think, maybe I should have judged her less and helped her more.
This is where I was a bit confused. Was this middle-aged Chinese lady the same one as the one in the plane? I would assume so, since he did mention that he should judge her less and help her more. If this was a different lady, Kwong never really helped her at all, so this line would not make that much sense. Regardless, even though Kwong didn't clearly mention if this was the same Chinese lady, the weight of his message and the emotional tension of the story did not drop one bit.
And as we finally arrive at my university, which is located by Mount Lectern,
most speakers would just walk to where they intend to as part of their performance. But Kwong takes it to another level by incorporating humor into little details such as this. If there's one thing that we can learn from this, it's to always look for ways to make an ordinary line extraordinary.
I step into my college, I look at the little middle-aged Chinese lady. She gives me this big warm smile and a big wave goodbye. And I give her a big warm smile too. The truth is, that day, I never actually found out what her name was. I never even found out if she lived in the same direction as my university. and I never found out if she had a daughter. But the one thing I did find out that day, that every day in every country, there is someone trying to start a brand new life. And it doesn't matter if they don't understand the language, they may not understand the culture, and they may feel lost and alone, like I did. But if I ever meet somebody like that, it doesn't matter where they're from, the color of their skin, how old or young they are, male or female, I now know if I see them ever again that I should, and we should, judge them less and help them more. And if you're judging me right now for only using that core phrase once, remember, judge less, help more.
What I really like about Kwong's ending is that it perfectly showcases the vibe Kwong is going for. He could have just ended it with the previous line, but he decides to use himself as part of the joke. An interesting creative choice, because what this does is that it tones down the weight of the message with humor. He wants the audience to be chill and relaxed. He knows that his speech is not an emotional roller coaster like most World Championship speeches. It's just one man's realization in an aeroplane and to his destination. And because he realizes this, Kwong can successfully create the casual and easygoing mood that he wants for his speech. One of the last aspects that I want to mention as a whole that I feel Kwong can improve upon is this. He tends to look down when transitioning from one point to another. While this does make Kwong look a lot more at ease and fits well with his goal to create a casual conversational tone, I think that the brief moment of looking down lowers the engagement from the audience slightly. If he kept his face up and smiled or kept a straight face after a humorous line, I think the extra engagement with the audience will help a lot. Regardless, I think Kwong has done a phenomenal job by attempting to deliver a speech with such a casual, conversational mood, unlike many other World Championship speeches. And really, this is what makes analyzing the World Championship speeches so exciting, to see how the approach in delivery and writing changed throughout the years. This year, all top 3 finalists touched on difference and acceptance. And while it is easy for YouTube channels such as this to break down and scrutinize some of the best 5 to 7 minute speeches in the world, it is not easy for them. Contestants like Kwong have to take risks, and they can only truly find out if they work or not after their performance. Thank you, Kwong, for delivering such a brilliant speech. I and many Toastmasters I know hope that you can one day become a world champion of public speaking. That's pretty much it about this video. A gentle reminder that I don't speak for Toastmasters International, the judges, or the contestants. I strongly recommend you to watch Kwong's speech again to truly appreciate and understand the nuances and techniques used in writing and delivering a world-class speech. Until then, keep learning, keep enjoying, and keep watching Literally Speaking.